Good afternoon. This is Kathryn Korostoff from Research Rockstar. Those of you who know me know that I have a special interest in how organizations optimize their use of market research. And I also run a company called Research Rockstar that provides online and on-site training to folks looking to improve their market research processes. Today I'm going to be sharing the results of an experiment that I did in January of this year. Some of you may have participated. It was called MRXU, the Market Research Twitterversity. And it was an experiment in online education. Well, what does that have to do with how we present market research results? Well, we're really interested in examining different ways of conveying information, and that's what the Twitterversity ultimately was about. So let's get started. First of all of us who've presented market research results to clients, whether they were internal clients or external clients, know that presenting information is not enough. We really do have to work hard to make sure that people truly understand the results of a market research project, that they truly have an idea about what to do in order to make the research actionable. And all too often it's, we're on deadlines, everybody's in a rush, they're busy, we're busy. It's very easy to email a document or present a slide deck and assume the project has been delivered. But in reality, that's really not the case. That's just the beginning. So what are some of the other things that people can do to deliver information? Well, of course, these days we have a lot of different technology options. And one of the things that I have found fascinating the last couple of years is looking at learnings from the education sector. Those of you who may have observed the education sector, you see that there's a lot going on in terms of how they're harnessing technology for distance learning to augment what's going on in the classroom and so forth. They're doing some very interesting things. And the key takeaway I get when I look at what's going on in the education sector is that they're teaching us that we can't over-rely on a single approach when we're sharing any kind of information, whether we're teaching a class or we're sharing market research results that we want people to take action with. We have to provide multiple exposures and use multiple modes. So does this apply to market research? I believe that it does. I believe that we have an opportunity in market research to expose people to the results of research studies multiple times using multiple modes. For example, imagine you've just done a large market research study. You know you're going to be delivering a slide deck. You know you're going to be doing at least one large presentation to your clients, again, whether they're internal or external. Well, how can we do that in a way where we're providing them multiple exposures to the data using multiple modes of communication so that it's not just a situation where we're sending it over the fence and hoping they're catching it? Let's talk for a minute about what exactly happened with the Twitterversity, and then I'll share with you what I learned that worked well and what didn't work so well in case you want to try an experiment like this for yourselves. So the MRXU, the Market Research University, sort of leveraging the hashtag for market research, was held in mid-January of this year. It was scheduled for a 15-hour duration because I was trying to get a good time zone coverage. I did set a schedule so that people could sort of tune in during the times that would be most covering topics of greatest interest to them. So you can see we covered a wide range of topics. We also encouraged people to submit questions using Twitter. So there was no voice augmentation. This was a 100% Twitter-based event. I also had some visiting professors to add to, frankly, the credibility of the event, but also the interactivity. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just me as a professor teaching a class. Clearly, this is a bunch of classes covering a wide variety of topics, and I wanted to make sure that the people who were tracking the hashtag could have interactions with a lot of different experts. Just to give you an idea of what this looks like, this is an actual excerpt of the transcript. One of the things I did for the people who attended Twitterversity is I created a printable PDF transcript of the entire thing once it was done, because obviously, since it did stretch for 15 hours, nobody other than myself was likely there for the entire duration. So you can see here that we've got some posts from a number of different people, including our own Ray Pointer. And in some cases, you'll see that it's a statement. So what I was doing and having the professors do was share literal little mini lessons on each of the topics. So, for example, here at the top of this page, we have a little blurb about what online focus groups are good for. Some of the tweets that were the mini lessons also had links if people were interested in learning more. Here's a link to a longer article or a link to a video that might be of interest. Then you can see that there's some other things that are happening here that are very interesting in terms of people asking questions or retweeting. We had a lot of retweet activity, which I thought was really a nice endorsement that people were finding what they were seeing in terms of these mini lessons of value. To give you an idea of what happened over the course of the day, I also, of course, had to do a word cloud. So this is my MRXU word cloud. It's not edited. This is just a literal word cloud based on the entire transcript of the day. So you can see that there were definitely some things that popped. Not surprisingly, MRXU itself was the most common, probably because that was the hashtag. And just because I was posting a lot of the lessons at Research Rocks, which is my Twitter handle, comes up a lot. You'll see that some of the other professors' names also pop quite a bit. On the left side, you'll see Jeffrey Henning's Twitter handle. And if you scan through this, you'll see that there are definitely some words that pop up in the word cloud that show that during the Twitterversity we were talking about hot topics like MROC. You can see that sort of towards the middle on the bottom. We did have a fair amount of talking about surveys, so the word survey comes up. But we do get some really good keywords. So again, just as a way to reflect that we really did cover a broad range of topics. So as I think about what the Twitterversity was about, really what I wanted to do was to test Twitter as a way to convey simple information to a broad audience. You know, right now, a lot of us who use Twitter do use it to share links, share information, ask quick questions, but is that really the same as educating people? Is it really the same as being an effective way of really helping people learn about a new topic or a key issue? So let's delve into that. What really worked and what really didn't? Well, in terms of using Twitter as a learning vehicle, what I found was that the Twitterversity had great reach. First of all, we ended up having over 800 tweets using the MRXU hashtag that day. That's a lot of tweets. They came from 154 people, which I thought was really interesting because, remember, it was myself and a handful of professors who were posting the lessons. But because we had a lot of observers and we had a lot of people retweeting, we ended up with 154 people actually using that hashtag that day. Now, of all the original tweets, so not counting the retweets, but the actual posts, over 300 were content related. I consider those market research facts or mini lessons, if you will. So sometimes it was a brief definition, sometimes it was a statement, sometimes it was a link to a broader article on a topic of interest. But still, of the over 800 tweets, 300 were specifically what I would call mini lessons. But how engaged were the audience? Well, see, I think that they were very engaged, and I think that that's something that worked. So for this group of people, the people who chose to participate, they did seem engaged. The 2 points of evidence that I have for that is that a third of the tweets were retweets. So people were not just watching passively. There were a lot of people who were actually retweeting the content. And also, I can tell you that it did drive website traffic. So people were looking at the tweets and clicking through on the links. So there was a lot of website, for those of us who had websites linked to this, and I can tell you, I followed, obviously, my Google Analytics that day and for the next couple days very carefully. It had a huge impact for the Research Rockstar website in terms of people actually clicking through. Also, I had a lot of people tell me that they liked that there was a simple hashtag, that was, that I didn't come up with some elaborate long hashtag. It was just MRXU. It was easy to follow. People liked that. And I do think that having the professors was really effective. We had some great professors. We had Tom DeRuck, Manny Flores, Annie Pettit, Jeffrey Henning, and Joel Rubinson. And obviously all these folks are active on Twitter. They're people who are very well known, who have good followings and high perceived credibility in the market research industry. And having them participate was great. A lot of them had very active discussions online. I would have to say that you know, Jeffrey was amazing, posting a lot of great content. Annie and Joel posted amazing content and links. And Tom was an absolute machine in terms of posting very rapidly a lot of great content on MROX. So it was really very, very successful that way. But there were definitely some challenges. First of all, a lot of people gave me the feedback that it was just information overload. There were so many tweets, there were so many things coming through, and even though we provided a schedule of topics, it was hard to enforce that precisely. Because what would happen is, even if we had topic A scheduled for 8 a.m., somebody who was just coming into Twitter for their workday at, say, 10 a.m. would see earlier tweets and start retweeting them or responding to them. So there was no way to control who was responding to what topic at what time, so all the information seemed to be coming at people all day long. There was also the feedback that there was an inconsistent level of information. When you're teaching a class, you can say this is an introductory class, an intermediate class, or an advanced class. Couldn't really do that with the Twitterversity, or I didn't think about doing it, I should say, to be more precise. So we hadn't specified what level of student the content should be geared for. As a result, we had content that was for beginners, intermediates, and advanced, all mixed in throughout the day. There was also the perception that some of it was Twitter spam. People who follow the MRX hashtag started, frankly, we had a couple of complaints, good-natured complaints, but we did have some complaints from people who said it was too much stuff coming in through the MRX hashtag because these people, as many of us do, keep some search windows open. Like if you use TweetDeck, you may have an MRX search window so that you can see what discussions are going on that's specific to market research during the course of the day. Because there was so much traffic from MRXU that day, those windows, those search windows could get very crowded, and that was a bit overwhelming. The other challenge was that ultimately there was no way to truly measure the total audience. I know how many people participated. I know that there was a lot of retweet traffic, but I have no way of estimating how many people were strictly observing without participating. So that's a challenge. I mean, there could have been 200 total participants. In reality, there could have been 800 participants. I just have no way of knowing. So obviously some things worked, some things, oops. Excuse me, I'm not getting my next slide. There we go. So some things worked, some things were challenges, and again, this was the first time of doing it, so there were definitely some learnings here. What I can say in terms of my key conclusions from this is that the people who did participate seemed to really be engaged. I've had a lot of communications after that event with the people who participated. I offered a sign-up. I offered a sign-up list for people who wanted to get updates. I got a good response to that sign-up list. People on that sign-up list have given me, have participated in a couple of different feedback and planning surveys and been really forthcoming with ideas for future topics and for areas for improvement. So for this group of people, the people who chose to participate in a Twitter-based university, they seem very engaged with this as a way of delivering information. So what does this all have to do with learning? Well, as I mentioned before, I think we have in the market research world an opportunity to learn from best practices in the education sector. That whole idea of we can't just deliver information once. We have to provide repeated exposures to important data, and we have to deliver it in multiple modes. And in a fragmented market, we do now have multiple communications options. And what I mean by fragmented market is that no matter who you're delivering market research results to, you're not delivering to a homogeneous group. You've got people with different job functions, different interests, different levels of expertise. So given that we've got complex audiences that we're delivering to, we do need to find different creative ways to deliver information. Now, I'll share with you also that over the last couple of years, in addition to experimenting with Twitter, I've also experimented with some clients using blogs and wiki as ways of delivering market research information in multiple modes. I'll say that my experience with the wiki was primarily negative. I did a couple of experiments and they were not very successful, so I haven't pursued that any further. I have had some success, though, working with clients using internal blogs as ways to augment delivery of market research information. So now I would add Twitter to that list. Twitter does, this is just based on one experiment, but Twitter does seem to appeal to a particular type of audience. Now, obviously, we were using Twitter to teach about market research. Could it also be used to promote public market research results? Well, obviously, Twitter is a public vehicle, so obviously nobody's going to be sharing research results from a confidential proprietary study, but I think that there's an excellent opportunity for those organizations who invest in market research for thought leadership programs to promote those results using Twitter. And I'm not talking about just sending one tweet with a link to a blog article about those results. I'm talking about hosting an event not unlike the Twitterversity, where multiple bits of data and a true discussion with true moderation is facilitated over Twitter. So I know that was a fair amount of information pretty quickly. Again, this was an experiment. We have 2 more Twitterversities that are about to be announced, so we'll continue the experiment. Personally, I don't think it's the be-all, end-all of how we communicate research results using social media channels, but I do think that there is an audience that's very tied into Twitter, and if this is an effective way for them to get information and to track information, I say we take advantage of it. And with that, I believe we are open for any questions.